Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Montana Highway 3 Corridor Study virtual public meeting. My name is Jackson Lang, and I am the MDT Corridor Study Planner and MDT Project Manager for the Montana 3 study. The study's purpose is to develop a comprehensive long-range plan for managing the corridor and determine what could be done to improve the corridor based on needs, public and agency input, and financial feasibility. This is a collaborative process with local jurisdictions, resource agencies, MDT, federal highways, and the public to identify transportation needs and potential solutions. Given an environmental constraint, financial feasibility, constructability, and corridor context. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today and look forward to hearing your thoughts and input within these limits. Sarah, we can go to the next slide. I would like to introduce Dowell, MDT's partner in this study. Dowell is the consultant covering the Montana 3 Billings corridor study. With us here today, we have Sarah Patterson, Dowell project manager, and Lisa Olmstead, Dowell public involvement. Lisa, I will hand it back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jackson. So hi, everyone. Thanks very much for taking the time out of your day to join us to visit about the Montana 3 Corridor Planning Study. In this virtual platform, we'll be presenting the same information as tomorrow's in-person open house. If you do wish to attend that event as well, it will be at the Aviation Department Operations Center from 4 to 6 p.m. More information on that is on the project website, including a map on how to get there. I'll drop a link to the website in the Q&A, and there will also be a QR code at the end of the presentation that you can use to get to the project website. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a couple housekeeping items. Please confirm that you are muted and that your camera is off. The presentation will be followed by a Q&A session, so throughout the course of the presentation, feel free to drop your questions into that Q&A, but we will address them at the end of the meeting. We will address questions that apply to the general public. If there's anything that's very specific to your individual property, we'll circle back with you after the meeting. At the end of the meeting, we will also provide project team contact information. So if you think of something after the meeting has concluded and you want to send us your thoughts or ask a question, you can access us that way. Finally, it's important to note that this meeting is being recorded and will be added to the study website for future reference or for anyone who wasn't able to attend today. All of MDT's efforts, including corridor planning studies like this one, contribute towards the goal of Vision Zero, working towards 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries on Montana roads. This meeting is held pursuant to Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which ensures that no person shall be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefit of, or otherwise be subjected to discrimination on the basis of protected status under any MDT program or activity. So with that, I will pass the baton to Sarah, who will lead you through the corridor study process.
All right, so I'll first start with the agenda for our presentation. So first I'll cover the planning study overview and the study schedule. We'll go over some high-level corridor characteristics, some areas of concern and key findings that arose from our existing and projected conditions analysis, and then next steps and opportunities to provide public comment. So we'll start with our project map, which shows our corridor study limits. So this project essentially looks at 5 miles of Montana 3. We're located here in the northwest part of Billings, and this is essentially the gateway to northwest Billings. On the very west side of the corridor, Montana 3 is more rural in nature, but then as you head east towards the East Airport Road roundabout, the corridor transitions to more of an urban arterial. Why is this corridor being studied? Well, Montana 3 is a high volume corridor serving about 12,000 vehicles per day, and traffic is expected to increase with new development planned on the corridor. We also want to understand impacts associated with the recently completed Skyway Drive So the Skyway Drive connection was completed in 2024 and now connects Montana 3 to the Heights neighborhood. And then lastly, we have several regional trails that converge at the intersection of Montana 3 and Zimmerman Trail. So we have many pedestrians and bicyclists present either on or near the corridor. So first kind of start with what is a corridor study before we dive into other detail. So this shows the life cycle of a project. So as you can see, a corridor study is really in the planning phase, which is kind of the start of that life cycle. So this study will look at safety, operational, and environmental conditions, and to identify what are the needs and constraints of this corridor specifically, and then identify potential improvement options. And all of that's done before moving into the design and construction phases. But throughout the entire life cycle of the project will be including transportation, resource agency, as well as public input. Next, just touch on the schedule for the project. So as you can see, the study kicked off in January of this year, and we have planned completion in December. At this stage, we've completed our environmental scan, which is an overview of all the environmental conditions on the corridor. We've prepared our existing and projected conditions report. And a lot of the content from that report is what we'll be presenting today in the meeting. And we've also prepared our needs and objectives. So at this point, we're really looking for feedback from all of you. So we can incorporate that feedback as we start to develop our improvement options report and the access management plan. And then after those reports have been developed, we'll have a second public meeting. So just to kind of summarize that slide, these are the reports that have been completed so far. And the existing and projected conditions is really the focus of what we'll be presenting on today. So wanted to quick go over the study purpose. So primarily the purpose is to identify what our corridor needs and objectives are, to identify our short-term and long-term improvement options, and then develop planning level cost estimates and identify funding sources for improvement options. And then lastly, developing an access management plan is also a key part of this corridor study. All right, so now we'll dive into some of the corridor characteristics, starting with our posted speed limit. So the west side of the corridor is more rural in nature, where we have a 70-mile-per-hour speed limit. And that's the area shown in blue. As you head east, approaching Zimmerman Trail, the speed limit reduces down to 50 miles per hour, which is that area shown in orange. And then it reduces again down to 45 as you approach the Airport Road roundabout. And then through our roundabouts themselves, we have a 15-mile-per-hour advisory speed. This map here shows our access density, which is essentially the number of driveways or side streets per quarter mile. Your access density is important because as you increase your access density, it increases your opportunity for vehicle conflict and traffic safety concerns. So as a high-level overview, the western, more rural side of the corridor has lower access density. And then starting at Rod and Gun Club Road and heading east, that section where it's shown as red and orange, that's really where we have the higher access density or higher number of side street approaches. We do have access control already in place on the section of the corridor starting just east of Zimmerman Trail roundabout and extending to the west. So access is already restricted on that part of the corridor. But our access management plan will be looking at access as a whole throughout the entire corridor to make recommendations. Next, wanted to dive into our zoning designations. So the area north and west of the corridor, which is hatched in green, that land use is mainly agricultural. Looking south of the corridor, the areas highlighted in yellow, those are our residential areas. We have heavy commercial north of the corridor, AJ Way and Huey Way. That's those brown areas right here. And then we also have Zimmerman Park in the southwest corner of the Zimmerman Trail roundabout. And then the Billings Logan International Airport, which is public. So as we looked at our existing and projected conditions analysis, some areas rose to the top as areas of concern and consideration. Traffic safety was one of the key areas of concern, as we do have an increasing crash frequency on Montana 3. Our traffic operations are a concern, as we have increasing traffic volumes and high delay expected in future conditions. We also have planned development on the corridor. There's a new National Guard facility and commercial development planned on AJ Way, which will impact traffic on the corridor. There are pedestrian and bicycle facilities throughout the corridor, so providing safe crossings for non-motorized users is key. And then we also have consideration of our environmental impacts. We want to understand the impacts of widening on adjacent land and environmental resources, and consideration of our hydraulic impacts. We want to avoid increases in runoff, as we do have limited stormwater facilities. So now we're going to dive into some of those areas of concern in a little bit more depth, starting with traffic safety. So this shows our crash density on the corridor between 2019 and 2023. As you can see, the areas in red are the higher crash density. So areas that are identified as higher as the Zimmerman Trail and East Airport Road roundabouts. So those intersections also have higher side street traffic, so they have more vehicles entering the intersection. So we do expect those to have higher side street, or to have the higher crash density. But I also wanted to point out that the area starting at Rod and Gun Club Road and heading east, that area also has relatively high crash density, and that also coincides with the area on the corridor where we have the highest access density, which is the area with the highest number of side streets. Looking at our crash severity and crash types, we had 115 total crashes over the 5-year period. 29 of those were minor injury crashes, and 3 of those were serious injury and or fatal crashes. And then half of all crashes occurred at intersections, and that includes our driveways and our side streets approaches. And then about a quarter of all crashes were rear-end collisions. So in summary, many of the improvement options that we're considering on this corridor are really going to focus on improving traffic safety. Next, I want to dive into the kind of traffic operations concerns. So this is our existing annual average daily traffic on Montana 3. As you can see, east of Zimmerman Trail, there's about 12,000 vehicles per day on the corridor. As you head west of Zimmerman Trail, there's only about 4,000 vehicles per day, so significantly lower traffic on the western, more rural side of the corridor. And then the higher volume side streets include Zimmerman Trail, as well as East Airport Road and North 27th Street. We use the regional travel demand model to estimate what daily volumes on the corridor may look like in 2045. And what the travel demand model indicates is that we're expecting about 2.1% growth per year between now and 2045. And so with that growth projection, we're expecting about 19,000 vehicles per day on the corridor in 2045, and the highest volume section east of Zimmerman Trail. So as a point of reference, the capacity of an urban two-lane arterial with left turn lanes is about 18,000 vehicles per day. So we're just a hair above that capacity in 2045. So this slide just summarizes those annual average daily traffic volume trends. So looking at traffic 20 years ago, in 2004, we had about 6,000 vehicles per day. We currently have about 12,000 vehicles per day, and then forecasting 20 years in the future, we're expecting about 19,000 vehicles per day. And so what we see with this expected traffic growth is that we're expecting several intersections to have failing traffic operations in 2045. And this is a concern because failing traffic operations often impact our traffic safety. So we looked at traffic operations specifically at 6 intersections on the corridor, which are shown in this figure here. Apache Trail on the west end is stop controlled on the south leg. We looked at the Zimmerman Trail Roundabout. We looked at the Rod and Gun Club Road, AJ Way, and Huey Way intersections, and those are all stop controlled on the north and south legs. And then we looked at the Airport Road Roundabout traffic operations. So this shows our PM peak hour level of service at those study intersections. So it shows level of service, A and B generally are shown in green, and those are reasonably free flow conditions. Level of service C or D represents stable flow or approaching unstable flow. And then we have level of service E and F, which are of concern, and those are represented in the darker brown. So in summary, for the existing condition, we have level service A at Apache Trail and Zimmerman Trail. At Rod and Gun Club Road, AJ Way, and Huey Way, we have level service C or D. And I wanted to point out that for our stop controlled intersections, that level of service reported is really reflective of the delay experienced by a vehicle on the side street. So that's a vehicle sitting on the side street waiting for a gap in traffic on Montana 3. Oftentimes those are vehicles trying to make a left turn maneuver, which is more difficult. So high delay is experienced at Rod and Gun Club Road in the PM peak as those vehicles look for a gap in traffic. And then as we look at traffic forecasted in 2045, we see level of service F at 4 of the study intersections, including the Zimmerman Trail Roundabout, Rod and Gun Club Road, AJ Way, and Huey Way. And also wanted to point out that as we looked at our development, as we looked at our forecasted traffic in 2045, we did include the development traffic expected with that National Guard facility planned on AJ Way. So in summary, a lot of our improvement options that we're considering will seek to address some of these traffic operational concerns that we're seeing on the corridor. And then lastly, wanted to touch on our pedestrian and bicycle facilities. So we have several existing trails and non-motorized crossings on the corridor. So the green is basically our paved multi-use trails. We have the Skyline Trail, which runs on the south side of Montana 3. We have a multi-use path on the east side of Skyway Drive. We also have pedestrian underpasses existing on the south legs of the Zimmerman Trail and Airport Road roundabouts. And then lastly, we have a rectangular rapid flashing beacon to help with those north-south crossings on the east leg of the Zimmerman Trail roundabout, which is shown as that blue diamond on the figure. Other thing I wanted to point out, not shown on the figure, is that there is a new paved trail planned in the study area, which is called Stagecoach Trail. And that'll be added on the south leg of the Zimmerman Trail roundabout, and that's planned for construction in 2028. We do realize that there are several pedestrian and bicycle safety concerns on the corridor. For example, we have Skyline Trail, which crosses several driveways, providing access to residential development on the south side of Montana 3. So vehicle, pedestrian, bicycle conflicts at those driveways and residential side streets is a current safety concern. And then we also have concerns with that north-south crossing on the east leg of the Zimmerman Trail roundabout, and that's shown in the bottom photo here. So a lot of our improvements that we're looking at through this study will seek to identify improvements that would improve pedestrian and bicycle safety, along with vehicle safety, and then also addressing those traffic operational concerns I discussed earlier. So that was all I had to present in terms of kind of covering our needs for the corridor as well as key areas of concern. But at this point, I think we're going to open it up for Lisa to talk about some ways to provide public input.
Yeah, so public participation is very important to planning studies like this. So there are numerous ways for you to offer comments to support and augment our work on this corridor study. I'd like to specifically draw your attention to the project website, where we do have an interactive map up and going, where you can specifically put your comment on where it's geographically tied to a specific location. Additionally, here is all of our contact information, so you can send questions and comments to us directly. At this point, we have not received any comments in the Q&A yet. Is that functioning properly?
It is not opened right now. Lisa, I had sent you an email.
Yeah.
It's
Let's
showing closed, but our chat is opened.
Sydney, do you have access to open the Q&A in the chat?
Yeah, it's showing open on my end, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks like if you go to the Publish tab, it shows the two chats that you had added so far, Lisa.
Okay. So are there any questions from the public? And of course, I know this is a lot to digest. Oh, there's Jeff. Jeff, let me unmute you. Okay, Jeff, you should be able to speak now. You should be unmuted. Jeff, I think you just need to unmute yourself now.
Okay, I think that worked.
There he is.
Yeah. I think that you're going to get some strong public comments on the not considering the airport access roads, as I brought up before, off of Overlook Drive. Those are extremely busy intersections, and to not have them considered at all in the intersection analysis. Certainly my board members, the aviation and transit board members from the city of Billings, I believe, will provide strong comment on the fact that those are not being considered, as well as the rental car companies that utilize those intersections and the other developments on the west end of the airport. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jeff.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're right. We didn't collect traffic counts at those intersections, but we are definitely, as part of our improvement options analysis, going to look at improvements that can be considered at those access points. We don't have a traffic count to be able to provide exact operational analysis, but we can still provide improvement options for those access points.
Okay. We just got a question from Ben. He asked, how many more residences can be built in the subdivision south of Highway 3 across from AJ Huey Way? And what is the expected traffic increase for that?
How many more residences can be built in the subdivision south of Highway 3? That's a good question. I guess that's not something we've really looked at through this project in terms of what is the planned growth on that south side. I guess I'd be interested to know, maybe that's something we could follow up with you on after the meeting if you're aware of development planned on that south side that we should be incorporating.
Yeah, Ben, maybe we will reach out to you. I know Ben is a commercial realtor, so he may have some additional insight. I did, for what it's worth, receive a comment from someone tied to their registration this morning. And she did talk about She lives on Masterson Way, talks about the challenges of the pedestrians crossing the approach, which you referenced, Sarah, talking about how the pedestrians often just just cross without necessarily looking both ways. Talked about concerns about the speed limit. Thought it might be nice to have some turning lanes for some of those heavily trafficked approaches. And another thing that I had not heard yet that was new to me, she talked about the snow storage that gets plowed up along the side of the road, being a challenge as they're trying to pull out onto the highway. It just limits visibility.
Yeah, no, that's helpful to consider for sure. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And we do have a few comments already in the commenting application. So you can also look to see what other people are commenting on if you're interested in that too.
Okay, and Wyeth, I see you've raised your hand. Give me just a moment. I'm gonna give you access. Okay, now I think if you unmute yourself, you should be good to go, Wyeth.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. I was trying to figure out the chat at my end, but I can't. I'm not capable. I guess I can't get it to open. But anyway, and these are things that you guys may have already contemplated. Throw out there. I haven't been as looped in on as up to now on the process, but I was curious on for the traffic when you were doing looking at the 2045. You talked about the commercial development around the National Guard facility and the Billings Flying Service. Then were you also looking out at Zimmerman and Highway 3 in terms of future development out there? We do have some information on what that might look like. And I was just curious how, when you were looking at, I was really surprised. I guess this is what prompted this, that roundabout would potentially be at F in 2045. That seems really surprising. So I just was wondering what the land use, like how those numbers were you were calculating, and if you needed any more information on that. Thanks.
Yeah, so in terms of our background growth, we were estimating about 2% growth per year for all of the turning movements at the study intersections. So basically that's how we came up for that forecasted 2045 traffic. And then understanding that there's going to be new traffic that would not follow existing turning movement patterns associated with that National Guard facility. We added that traffic on. So that would be, again, a lot of traffic maybe heading south on Zimmerman Trail, kind of following the existing travel patterns where a lot of people use Zimmerman Trail as kind of a connection point between Montana 3 and the south and west side of Billings. So we can definitely provide some more kind of detail on our traffic volume assumptions and development, but yeah, that's kind of a high level overview of what we assumed for those 2045 traffic volumes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we can follow up and see if there's anything else to add there. And then the only other question I had was, and again, this is future, like you outlined where you're headed with projects and stuff. We have the two pedestrian underpasses, one at Airport and 27th, and one at that's east-west at Zimmerman. I know we've been looking at the opportunity for one north-south at Zimmerman, also given now the trail corridor plus future development on the north side of Zimmerman, and maybe even back when we did the Highway 3, the original corridor study, we looked at a couple different places where there might be opportunity for underpasses. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there too. But thank you. Thanks for doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that, Wyeth. And honestly, if anyone else in the meeting has a question or comment that you'd like to share and you're struggling with the Q&A, feel free just to raise your hand and I'll give you access to unmute yourself.
And I can't get my hand down, so I'm not asking another question. So just so you know.
That's I I can lower your hand for you. There you go, I think. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? But like we said, we will be in person at the in-person open house tomorrow at the Aviation Operations Center. And there is a map to that on the project website. That was a new location to me, so I thought a map may be helpful even for the locals because I didn't necessarily know where that is, but it's very easy to access right off the Montana 3 corridor. So if you want to engage any deeper, visit with the project team about any specific concerns, we'll all be there. And concurrently, if you have any thoughts or questions or anything like that that pop up as we work through this corridor study, you're welcome to call or email any of us at any point. Looks like we've got one more question. What factors play into the annual traffic growth, and how does the development of Skyway Drive impact that growth? What assumptions did you make about that development?
Yeah, so I guess generally the population and employment growth is what's modeled in the travel demand model. So we look at where that development is planned within the Billings region, and then we look at where new employment is planned within the Billings region, and that's how that 2.1% growth specific to the Montana 3 corridor was developed. And so that's kind of a little bit of background on how we develop that growth rate.
Thanks for that. Ben, if you have any follow-up questions on that, you're certainly welcome to drop them in the Q&A. Okay, and Barbara has a question. Barbara, give me just a second. I'm going to give you permission, and then you should be able to unmute yourself and go ahead and take the floor. Barbara, you'll need to unmute yourself. Let me see. I don't believe I can do that for you. No. There you go. There you are.
Hi, thank you. All along when Skyline Trail was being built, I tried to get into the planning that we're on Masterson Circle. And the hardest things about the turn off Masterson Circle are the fact that they don't have, I think it's what you call an apron, where all the turns are strictly 90 degrees. And it makes it harder if you want to come in, kind of you're cutting the corner, if you're turning right or whatever. And they never addressed those. And they're still pretty much that way. The one is you're going east as you approach the westernmost, if you go to turn right. If you were going to try to slide in, get out of the way as soon as you could, there's a metal, some kind of a lid or something that I know eventually it'll get washed out and because you go over it. But anyway, that's always been a concern of mine. I will say, ever since the roundabout, not the roundabout, but the inner belt loop went through, it is miraculous how much less traffic there is, except at the busiest times. I can pull up to the stop sign to go out on the 3, and most of the time there's nobody coming. It's easy to get on and off. Probably not at peak traffic time, but probably as the development continues, that may start to slip away. But it's been pretty nice, I can tell you. That's it. Thank you.
That's interesting. That's good perspective, Barbara. Thanks for sharing that.
Yep.
Okay, so Q&A is still open, but there's no new questions, and you'll have seen how people are able to just raise their hand, and we can unmute you as well if for any reason that Q&A is not working for you properly. Okay, Ben, hold on. Let me see. I see your hand. Let me unmute you. Or sorry, I will If you access now, Ben, you should be able to unmute yourself and take the floor. You're still muted, Ben.
Can you hear me now?
There you are. Yep, we found you.
Great. Hi, Lisa. Thanks. Hey, I just wanted to follow up on that question about the development of Skyway Drive and the inner belt loop there. I guess the question was more geared around, did you guys make any assumptions about a certain percentage of that corridor being built out or developed into residential versus commercial? Were there any assumptions around how that's getting used and what the development looks like over the next 20 years? And maybe in conjunction, any impact that city services, water, sewer might have on that.
Yeah, so your question was more specific to kind of the growth expected along Skyway Drive north of Montana 3. Yeah, that's a great question. I actually offhand don't know the sorry, could you mute yourself? I think I'm hearing my voice. Oh, thank you. I was just getting a reverberation, or an echo. So I was going to say, I can look to see what the travel demand model is expecting, because again, we were really just kind of using that travel demand model as a guide for what development is expected along that north leg of Skyway Drive. I could kind of look into that a little bit more in depth, but I'm not sure offhand the proportion of residential versus commercial that was assumed in the travel demand model on Skyway Drive.
Gotcha. And with that, do you know what assumptions were made about how much of Skyway got developed? Obviously, there's a lot of road there that in 20 years, it's probably not all going to get developed.
Yeah, I could similarly look into that as well, in terms of how much was the assumption of what would be developed over the next 20 years.
Thank you. That's all. You can give me the boot on audio again.
Are there any other questions or comments? Now is a great time to get the whole team's input. Otherwise, of course, tomorrow is, you're all welcome to attend tomorrow. The content will be the same, but an in-person environment certainly offers a little additional opportunity for conversation. Like we mentioned at the beginning, this video will be added to the project website too. It will take us just a day or so to get it finalized, polished, routed. So perhaps if you check back next week, we'll have it loaded to the website. Additionally, we will put the PowerPoint slides and the display boards that we'll be sharing at the open house tomorrow on the study website as well. So if you want to share them with your neighbors or colleagues, anyone else who is interested, there certainly are future opportunities for people to digest and learn this information that's presented today. Okay. Well, I'm going to check the Q&A once more. We have nothing further in the Q&A. Jackson, would you like to provide any parting thoughts?
No, we just want to welcome everyone to the meeting tomorrow. It's an open house concept. Stop anytime between those 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. hours, and we will be available to answer any questions, walk through any of the poster boards with you, and yeah, it should be a good meeting.
Excellent.
Nothing else on my end.
Okay. Anything you want to add, Sarah, before we wrap things up today?
Nope.
Okay, well, gosh, thanks everyone for your participation. Thanks for bearing with us through the Q&A struggles, and unmuting and whatnot. So we're glad to hear all your thoughts. If you think of anything else that you'd like to share with the team, feel free to call or email us, or like I said, that interactive map is an excellent place to provide your comments. Both helps you to communicate what it is you're thinking and helps us to understand as best we can. Alrighty, with that, looks like people are starting to drop off, but we will go ahead and end the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Great presentation, Sarah.
Thank you.